Hello guys, and welcome back. So today we're going to be having a summary of what has been happening in the Trail series for the last month or so. So for people who have struggled to keep up with everything that's been going on, this will just be something to help them out in regards to, the news, the big announcements, and a little bit of commentary as well, so they're kept in the loop, so to speak. So without further ado guys, let's get going. Okay, so our first port of call, guys, is actually in regards to a potential port. Now, we need to skip back in time here to around about June the 20th, where we had the 15th anniversary of the Trail series at the Dengeki Game Festival. And at that time, Kondo was asked by people, if he had any plans to bring the older games in the series to the modern consoles, to modern platforms. And at that time, he was quoted as saying this: "We don't like the fact that options to play our past works disappear with time. I like to believe our games are timeless, but consoles will change over time. Due to that, we want to leave an option to play them in some way. The Trail series especially will continue on still, so it will be nice to be able to look back on past titles." Now that was already pretty exciting, but skip forward a month or so, and Kondo was having an interview with Easy Allies, and on that stream he was asked the question about Ao and Zero no Kiseki, Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure, and he was quoted as saying that they do want to bring those games to a Western audience. Now that is huge. For me personally, I haven't actually played both Zero and Ao yet. I'm actually playing through both of them as we speak, through the fan translated versions, because I only started playing the Kiseki games last year, so I'm a pretty new fan, but I'm already hooked, and I'm very much enjoying it so far. But from what I know, Ao no Kiseki and Zero no Kiseki are two of the best games that Falcom have ever produced, not only in the Trail series but just in general in their game library. Now, this is nothing against the guys at the Geofront project, okay guys? The guys at the Geofront project I have a huge amount of respect for taking time out of their own days to work on this, because they love the games as much as we do. However, to have an official localized form of both Ao and Zero would be huge. For me, for two reasons, because the first reason is that I would love to have a physical copy of these games, okay? I would love to have two physical copies of these games for my own collection. That's just me. I mean, I like to collect. I do like to collect games, especially in my favourite series. The second reason is because I want to support Falcom in whatever way that I can. And by buying these games, I can support them, I can give them my money because they deserve that money. And I'm pretty certain there are lots of other fans in the Trail series who would do the same thing, who would look at it and go, you know what, I will buy these. Even though they may have played the games before, they may want to play them, have them for their own collection, and to support Falcom as well, of course. I mean, why would you not want to support the guys who are making your favourite series of games? Now, some people will say that he's just pandering to the crowd, but I believe there are a couple of reasons why this isn't just some baseless statement. The first reason is because Kondo has promised that something is happening, and he has also expressed many times that he wants to bring the Crossbell Duology to the West. The second reason, I think, is the more tangible of the two, is that Falcom, even though they're in very early stages, are actually working on something, and that's key. And with all of these comments coming around with the Crossbell Duology as well, I would like to think that the Crossbell Duology is also included in those plans. As for an update, I don't know when we're going to get an update. I don't think we're going to be getting it anytime soon. It might be another 6 months, because at the moment they've got too much on their hands at the moment. They've got Cold Steel 3, they need to figure out what's going to be going on with End of Saga, they've got the new game, the new crossover game that's going to be linked to End of Saga as well. So Nihon Falcom are kind of got their hands tied at the moment. But I'd like to think that in about 6 months' time we'll get something tangible that Kondo will feed over to us. So I'm looking forward to that. That's actually quite exciting. Like I say, I would love to have these two games on a modern platform in official localized form. It'd be great to play them in that regard. So yeah, that was great. Now, the second thing we're going to be talking about, guys, are the localization partner that Falcom are currently working with to bring Trails of Cold Steel 3 to the West. Now, for the longest time, now we have to go back in time a bit here, guys, to around about November time. At this time, many people thought that Xseed, who had localized the first 5 games, so the whole of the Sky Arc, and they'd also done Trails of Cold Steel 1 and Trails of Cold Steel 2, would get the rights to localize Trails of Cold Steel 3 because they had done a fantastic job on the previous entries. However, there was speculation that Xseed was going to lose it for a various amount of reasons, and sure enough, come January, those rumours were actually brought to reality, as the rights for localization of Trails of Cold Steel 3 went to NIS America, or Nippon Ichi Software America, okay? Quite simply, a lot of people lost their minds when this happened. NISA were not in the best place in terms of reputation. Their reputation had been dragged through the mud for 2 reasons, which we're going to be going over now. Now, the first incident that caused a bit of a stir was the Disgaea 5 debacle. NISA released a demo for Disgaea 5 onto the Steam library, and people of course could download this and play up to, I believe it was chapter 3. However, very quickly people started to realise that they could go beyond chapter 3. What NISA had done, inadvertently of course, is they had released the full game of Disgaea 5 onto the library rather than the demo. They had released all of the game files, and all people had to do was rearrange the Steam directory a little bit, rearrange those installation files a little bit, and they were able to access the full game. So that was a bit of a cock-up, to say the least. Immediately, NISA took away all of the copies that had been, all of the demos that had been downloaded by users. So from a PR standpoint as well, it was pretty bad. And then add on to that the fact that they then put a massive delay on the game. They basically said this game will be released in summer 2018. You know, can't get more vague than that. Summer 2018. I believe it was meant to be released sometime in mid 2018, but then when they suddenly come up with that as a future release date, especially after the whole debacle, they were definitely not favourites among the Disgaea fandom for what happened. Now we move on to the catastrophe that was the Ys 8 localization. Now, Ys 8 is probably my favourite Ys game. Okay, it's probably my favourite Ys game. I put it above Oefenfeldgana, which is saying a lot because I loved Oefenfeldgana. That was easily my favourite up until that point, and Ys 8 surpassed it in pretty much every way. But when it came out, it was pretty much unplayable. There was so much wrong with it. The port was just terrible. I mean, like, you know, resolutions were all over the place, button mappings were all over the place, you know, it was shocking. But the real bad one, the really bad one, which distracted from the whole thing, was the fact that the translation was terrible. It was literal Japanese translations put into English, as if they'd been put through a Google Translate bot and then brought into the game. Don't get me wrong, you got some really funny translations, but for any of you guys who don't know Japanese too well, if you took a Japanese sentence and then translated it directly to English, you know, quite a large sentence, it just wouldn't make sense. And that's basically what we got with Ys 8. It left a really sour taste in the mouth of a lot of people. Now, credit to NISA, they did actually try to fix this quite quickly, okay? They apologized for what happened in regards to that. They brought out loads of patches to get it to a workable standard, to a standard that it should have been when it was released. And now it is actually okay. It's in a good spot. It's in a spot that it should have been when it was released. So fair play to them. They even redid the whole translation. But quite simply, the damage was already done for a lot of Falcom fans. A lot of people just said, we don't want NISA to get any more Falcom products. No more Falcom licensed products for NISA. You know, winning back that trust is very difficult to do. So when NISA actually got the localization rights to possibly the biggest Trails game yet, people lost it. They couldn't believe what had happened. You know, it just boggled the mind that Falcom at that time would allow that to happen, would go to NISA rather than their tried and tested Xseed and you know, risk everything for possibly the biggest release of the Trail series so far. Now let's skip forward to the present day. I believe that many people, including myself, have done a complete 180 on our perspectives of NISA. They have done so much for Trails of Cold Steel 3, they have done so much for the Trail series by extension. If their marketing is as good as their finished product, we're in for a real treat. Now this is nothing against Xseed, okay? Xseed were a much smaller company, but they didn't have the means to market the Trails series. You know, when I first found Trails of Cold Steel 3, Trails of Cold Steel 3, when I first found Trails of Cold Steel, this was my first Trails game, it was on a whim. I literally found it on sale, on Steam, and I thought, this looks good. But that's the point, guys. I didn't know anything about the Trails series. It didn't exist in my mind until I saw Trails of Cold Steel. And then as I started to explore a bit more, I realised there were more games in this series, and then, of course, the rest is history. Xseed just hadn't marketed it at all. NISA, it's just polar opposites in what they've done. You know, they've done competitions, you know, for official jackets and PS4 Pros. They've taken Kondo around for actual press conferences and stuff like that to get him interviewing, get the community involved. You know, the community involvement is huge for this game now. You know, they've been getting it at E3, they had it at Anime Expo, they had it in, I believe, in Paris as well. They even managed to get it into the PlayStation Mag, the official PlayStation Mag, and the official PlayStation channel, okay, YouTube channel. That's huge. That is huge exposure, and it's the exposure that the Trail series really needs at the moment. I've got a lot of respect for them for bouncing back. Now, I will admit there is a little bit of an inkling still in me thinking, oh man, it's all so good at the moment, there's got to be something that's going to happen. But I'd say 95% of myself is pretty positive about what is happening with NISA. I've watched what they do, I've watched what they've done, and all I can think is kudos to them, okay? Kudos to them. And I think many of the community have also come around a little bit so far, especially after the gameplay we saw quite recently. Now, NISA did actually bring out a little bit of a bombshell, okay? On Tuesday, I believe it was. They brought out a tweet saying that Trails of Cold Steel 3 is going to be delayed until October 22nd. But many of the community, you know, even though they were disappointed, were very supportive of this. You know, they looked at it, they said, you know what, no problem. You know, if you need another month to bring this game out in the best possible form, take your time with it. Really show that you want this game to succeed, really put the effort in, and really bring out that quality product that Falcom deserves. If it takes another month for you to do that, I've got no issue with that, okay? So fair play to them for letting us know. The community were very supportive of it for the most part, and yeah, all I can say is A+ to NISA so far. Really good job. So finally, guys, we're going to be talking about Kondo himself, okay? Now, the guy's a machine. He's been going around all over the world to promote this game. He is a fan of what Nihon Falcom put out. And to give you an idea of how much of a fan he really is, the guy was employed by Falcom because of a fan page that he had created. Like, of course he had the credentials. I think he was applying for their accounting department, and he had the credentials, but when they saw the applications, they realized that he was the guy who had made this Falcom dedicated fan page. And based on that, they went, you know what? You're in. The guy is a fan. The guy wants every series that comes out for Nihon Falcom to succeed. All of them. And he will do whatever he can to make that happen. You know, I've got huge respect for Kondo. Now, recently there was an interview done by Endless History, and for those of you guys who don't know what Endless History is, it's an absolutely fantastic blog page for all things Falcom related. The lady who created it, who goes by the name Floofy, she's very active in the community. You know, she does a fantastic job, and she was lucky enough to go to Anime Expo and go to this press conference with Kondo. And, you know, she basically condensed all of her questions down to their answers and put it in one big blog post for everyone to see. And, you know, this kind of stuff is brilliant. You know, if you're really into Falcom, please visit this website, please visit this blog page. It's absolutely fantastic. I'll put a link in the description, because anything like the latest news and stuff like that, this is one of the best ones for it. Now, as for the interview itself, I loved it, okay? It was basically a fan perspective. Floofy knew that other people would be asking the formal questions. She wanted to get into the more personal questions, the more, how can I say, like digging in a bit more what the fans really want. And, you know, I loved this interview. It's a really long interview, I will say. There's a lot of questions that were asked, but I will put the link in the description for you guys if you want to see it yourself. But I will go over some of the main points that I found very interesting from this interview. So the first thing that was mentioned was a little bit of an insight into what happens in soundtrack design for Nihon Falcom. So for those of you guys who don't know, I love Nihon Falcom music. I think they are the best when it comes to music production. I don't think there is any soundtrack that I hate. I love all their music. It just really evokes emotion in the player. No matter what scene you're playing in, no matter what battle you're doing, they just nail it every single time. Now, for the most part, there is a separate team just stated as JDK. That is their name, JDK. And no one knows what it stands for, not even Kondo himself. Kondo admitted himself, he goes to shareholder meetings and people ask him this and he just says, I don't know. I don't have a clue. It's just really interesting to hear, you know, this secret team that basically creates these amazing musical masterpieces, these symphonies that just no one knows the name of. Now, the second thing that was really interesting to me was that Trails in the Sky first chapter and Trails in the Sky second chapter were originally meant to be one game. I believe at the time that the end of first chapter came along, they were about roughly halfway through the game and it was already about 3 years in development at that point. And the shareholder said, we need a game, we need something to be released. And they were forced to release first chapter in its current state with that massive cliffhanger ending. I mean, that's pretty much become synonymous with all of the games since then. And I'm so glad that they kept that kind of cliffhanger ending as, you know, a staple of the series, because it makes you want to play more. It makes you go, I must find out the answers. I must find out how this story unfolds, you know? And it's crazy that a simple shareholder statement, simple shareholder impatience, so to speak, has basically made the story of the Trails series just all that more dynamic. It's just really cool to hear about. And the final point that I thought was really interesting was in regards to the development cycle. So after first chapter and second chapter, Nihon Falcom were going to move on to Trails of Cold Steel. That means we were going to get no Crossbell Duology and we were going to get no Trails in the Sky the Third. But after a while, the creative teams came together and they started to realise that, you know what, we've talked about Crossbell a lot. We've talked about, you know, all these other lands. How about we bring out some other games to flesh out the story and really show Erebonia as this, you know, this massive power that no one understands and everyone is scared of and apprehensive about. And it just shows, you know, this flexibility with Nihon Falcom, you know, to think long term, to think, you know, what is going to make this more dynamic? What is going to be the best thing for this story? It's this idea that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon with the Trails series. And I love that they just went, you know what, forget about Cold Steel for now, let's make the Crossbell Duology, which are probably two of their best games, or so I've heard about. Let's make Trails in the Sky the Third, which has given us so many questions, so much backstory. I just can't imagine the Trails series without those. And then when we finally get to Trails of Cold Steel, everything is ramped up, you know, the story is ramped up, the atmosphere ramped up because of everything that we've done before. And that's just really cool, that they're so flexible and they think so long term in terms of their goals. And that's why I love Nihon Falcom. So there we go, guys, that's the end of the video. Those are the events that I consider to be the biggest news of the last month in the Trails series. Now I want to know from you guys, do you want to see more of these news summaries every month? I want to try and do them once a month. At the end of the day, I make videos like this to help people who don't have the time to keep up to date with everything that's happened in the Trails universe. You know, there's any improvements that need to be made, I will take those on board as well, of course. But I have a lot of fun with them. And if you like them, of course, I will do another one in a month or so. So guys, I'll see you for the next video, which is going to be another lore video. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm going to have a lot of fun with this one, and I hope that you enjoyed watching it as well. Until next time, I'll see you later.